a decade.
Yeah. Yeah. I've literally been like 6 different people this year.
I feel like, I just feel like it's just been so much. Like, what, can I chill?
Sometimes I'm like, all right, I think, I'm finally, growing and healing. And then it's like, boom. It's like, oh, okay, so I gotta work on this thing here, even though I've been through all of these other things. Okay, all right, let me just breathe and try again.
I feel like, and may I ask, are you in your 20s?
I am 31.
Geez, I was about to say, maybe it's because we're in our 20s and this is a lot, but you just got over your Saturn return, to be fair.
Yeah, it's been, that Saturn return was, it was ass kicking.
Do you feel like you've come out a new person?
I'm a whole different person. Like who I was in my 20s, I am not in 31. I didn't know who I was in my 20s. And I allowed other people, especially relationships, to dictate who I was. And as soon as I hit 30, it was kind of like, boom. Yeah, we're not doing all this other stuff anymore. We're going to either sever ties, stop being in relationships don't work for us. Yeah, stop fighting for all that stuff that you've been hanging on to. We're cleaning house. You're not going to like it, but this is what's happening. And from there, like from 28 to 31, I've been doing a lot of therapy.
Yes.
And so it's like unpacking, letting go, trying to figure out how to surrender. Because surrender it feels very complex to me. Probably because it sounds illogical. So I'm working on that. And I've become my weirdest self. So I think it was like around 28 that I started getting into crystals, astrology, different things. My mom knows I'm like the little bruja of the family. My friends know to take me to crystal shops whenever we're traveling, things like that.
Nice.
And in 30, every year, I feel like I become more woman and then more myself.
I love that.
It feels strange because it's kind of like you have an outfit on that you don't remember buying, but it looks great. And you're like, I'm going to go with this. This is not my usual style, but I'm going to go with this.
I love that. I feel like I'm trying to incorporate a lot of those things into my day-to-day now. Like, I don't have my Saturn return until like a few more years. Like, it's gonna be a while, but I think
that's good.
I think that I've reached a point where it's like I'm trying, or rather I'm giving myself the permission to shine. And I think I'm giving myself the permission to let go. And it's hard because I feel like for me, I am a very, very emotional person. And I think that I've spent a lot of time, intimacy doula, it's important for me to become intimate with myself before I can try to help others into their intimacy. But I've been working really, really hard to strengthen my relationship with self. And it's been ugly and it's been scary and it's been difficult. And I don't know when it's going to stop. Sometimes it feels like it's never going to stop. But
I don't think it stops. It changes.
Yeah. But I think that I'm so much more happy with myself. I'm scared.
Yeah.
I'm still scared, but I'm happy with it all.
And I think that's probably the best part, because I too am scared. Most of the time, I'm just like, okay, I'm feeling all these things I'm not used to feeling, but we're going to feel these things and we're going to see what. And I talk to myself, I talk to all of myself. Inner child work has been really heavy this year. And it's just the inner dialogue changes as time goes by. And I think that's the key. It's not always going to be pretty. It might not always be positive. But when I enjoy myself, I can enjoy with others. And that used to not be the case.
I mean, I really appreciate you saying that, because I don't know. I don't know if you've ever seen those articles that say, what advice would you give to a younger version of yourself?
Yeah.
I really appreciate you saying that it never stops, because I feel like, I think that like those articles and kind of the culture we live in, sometimes it feels like we can just like fix everything and then we'll be good, as opposed to seeing life as a continuous journey that we're continuously healing from and enjoying. And like to hear that it just, it never stops. Like it's heavy. It's hard. This has been a rough year, but it's real. And I feel like then it's like, if you kind of have the perspective that it's always continuing, just in a different way, you can kind of start to realign your mind and be ready for that.
Yeah, I think, and I definitely don't have it figured out at 31. The only thing that I wanted to say is that things hit different as you age, but there's never a peak that you reach. With time, there's never really like, oh, I'm here and I'm done now. I think it just changes, and there's no real peak. It's just a roller coaster. Sometimes it's straight, sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down, it goes backwards. But the experience and the perception changes.
I think that I like, so they say that your brain's not fully developed until you're 25, and I just recently had my 25th birthday, and
what a
and I really felt that. Like I really felt that. Like I ended up having like pretty much a mental breakdown just because of whatever was going on in my life. And like after it, I think like what I really unpacked was just my own imposter syndrome.
Right.
Like I felt as though like, I think that it's very interesting because so I grew up in poverty. I'm a first generation college student, et cetera, but people like will call me privileged. And like typically it's like non-Black people of color.
Right.
And it's just very interesting because I think it's very debatable. Like it just is a very interesting word to use. And then I think, and I think for me, I try to hear both sides to some extent. So it's like, I can understand. I have academic privilege. Like I went to Columbia University and I've worked at very prestigious firms and stuff. So I have a resume where people stop and assume that I'm more intelligent than the average person, whether that is true or not.
Okay.
So I do see like I walk into a room and identify the privilege that I come in with. But I think that like for Black people who work especially hard to get where they are, it's almost unfair to call them privilege.
Disrespectful.
Yeah, because it really it really takes away the fact that Black people, when we get somewhere, it's probably because we work twice as hard to get there.
Blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah. I think it depends who that's coming from and what the intention is.
Absolutely. I've never been called privileged and felt like somebody had good, like fair intentions. I kind of felt like it was like they just didn't understand me and like they were kind of projecting what they felt onto me.
right? Most times that's what that is. But that's strange. For me, that's bizarre because you don't get into the rooms just because, you're in The Sims and somebody dropped you in there. That's not how it works.
Exactly. And
I
then
feel
I
like
think,
privilege is more like that.
yeah, I literally have never had anybody recommend me for a job. Like, I've never had a relative like say, "Oh, this is a job opening. Like, I know somebody who can get you in." And like, I've met people who like one of my bosses once told me he's never had to interview for a job ever. He's always just networked his way in one.
Oh, well,
And I was like,
that must
wow.
be nice.
Must be nice. Like, I was like, wow. But yeah, like I think it's very interesting because I think everyone to some extent goes through imposter syndrome, but I had to, I think the thing that really like kind of like helped me heal was something that like my therapist never really found the words to say it, probably because the vast majority, except for one, was Black. Like, except for one was like only one of my therapists were Black.
That means so much.
Yeah. So then, because I went to predominantly white schools, so then it's like the therapist like represented that.
Slacking, yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think they even had the words to articulate, like, kind of like going back to that conversation we were having about self-esteem. The imposter syndrome manifests when I went to college and people assume I had a sports scholarship. The imposter syndrome happened when I was told by a professor that because I'm Black, I might have a higher chance of getting into an Ivy League school. Like, the imposter syndrome happened for every single internship I worked really hard to get, that I was then like a percentage increase of their Black diversity quota.
I feel like in our case, Black people of color, imposter syndrome isn't just insecurity of self and not feeling they belong. I feel like it's that all of the microaggressions create this doubt within ourselves. And you're also walking into the rooms where no one looks like you, and you're like, whoa. Am I really supposed to be here?
And I think like what's hard is like space for that conversation is not held because realistically speaking, a lot of people just don't have the historical context to understand Black people's pain. So when Black people express it, people literally have a limited, like, they're ignorant. They're like just blatantly ignorant. And then they say dumb things.
This happens to you? That is just impossible.
And then it's hard to hold space for your own emotions when you actually have to act as a teacher as well. So then it's like, I feel like, yeah. And then it just ends up being what feels like an emotional and invalidating experience. Like, it's like the amount of Black people that know how to pull up studies about things that we're going through. It's like, why is every Black person an expert on their pain? Like, on one hand, yes, we should be an expert on our pain, but it's like the amount of pain that Black people have to be an expert on is ridiculous and unfair.
Yeah, and it's crushing.
Yeah.
It's unnecessary for me to keep replaying my pain so you can understand it when you tend to be the people who put it in place.
And in reality, sometimes I feel like walking outside and being Black, or I feel like any marginalized person can resonate this, but walking outside and being Black feels like being in an abusive relationship with the world. I feel like, constantly gaslit by the people I interact with.
Yes. 100%. And I think a lot of people don't get that.
Yeah. It's a lot.
It's a lot of years of the same. But I think, little by little.
It actually does get easier, I think.
Yes, like, I think community helps too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think one thing that changed my life in college, I decided that I needed Black friends. So I do
Yeah.
have white friends.